distributed, not distorted. They are close to each other, but not overlapping. Okay. In this magnification, we can also assess or the estimate the number of WBCs. Wait lang. Saan tayo? Okay.
Sa ano? Sa day 1. Oras ba ito? September 20.
Okay. So in the 40X, you find an area where the red blood cells, and then you obtain an estimate of the WBCs. But basically, personally, I do not use estimation of WBCs for the in PBS. So in the WBC estimation, what you do is you count the number of WBC in H of 10 high dry or high power fields. When we say high dry, we don't use the oil in using the oil immersion, using oil in the objective. You get the average number and then you multiply the average by 2,000. Okay. And this is how it's going to be counted. For example, you see an average of 4 WBCs in each high dry field. So that's 4 times 2,000 is equals to 8,000. Please do not use this to issue a result. This is just for you to, that's why I don't encourage people to do WBC estimation on the smear. This is just for you to verify or to validate that the machine count or your counting in the Neubauer is correct or close to that. So the descriptive analysis of the WBCs is done at 100x at the oil immersion. Yung sinasabi kaninang high dry, naka 40x lang siya. But there is a high dry wherein it's 100x, but it's not using oil as a media for, it's a medium rather for magnifying it. So look for the predominant cell. Is it the neutrophils? Is it the lymphocytes? So that a normal smear will have a predominant neutrophil with a predominant neutrophils and a minority of lymphocytes. You also have to consider the maturity of H cell, like from promyelocytes, metamyelocytes, the myelocytes, your band forms, your those are criteria for determining the maturity of the WBCs, particularly the neutrophils. There can be toxic chains as toxic granules, or a reactive chain seen in lymphocytes or typical lymphocytes. There will be also abnormal forms or infectious agents that you see in red blood cells, such as your malaria, and in rare instances, but in Africa this is common, your trypanosomes can be seen inside the red blood cells. Okay, so this is how this is a 40x estimation rather of WBC, which diba? 3 times 2 is equals to 6,000. But this is just one field. In WBC estimation, you do it in 10 fields, the counting. This one obviously is increased Kasi isang field pa lang, ilan na siya? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So there are 8 already. Parang if this is true to all the fields, then this is like 16,000. These are actually leukemic cells, or these are blast cells already. Okay. You also look at the platelets. And in this case, this is a lymphocyte. This is a lymphocyte in the middle. This is a lymphocyte in the middle, and these are the platelets. Platelets are not cells, but they are fragments of your megakaryocytes, but they are called your thrombocytes. Okay, let me show you now the video of bone marrow aspiration first. Okay. Sana ano to.
Pwede ba i-edit yan? Depende mo. Editable. Parang ko pa ano? Ano ko yan? Ito ng pag-dito siya.
Can you hear them, class?
The New England Journal of Medicine. This video will demonstrate the procedure for bone marrow aspiration and bone marrow biopsy from the posterior iliac crest. Obtaining a bone marrow aspirate and core biopsy is often necessary when evaluating a patient who has a hematologic abnormality. Examining bone marrow is also useful in the diagnosis of metastatic spread of non-hematologic malignancies and to diagnose metabolic disorders. Gather the necessary equipment prior to performing the procedure. You will require equipment for sterile skin preparation and a sterile field, 1% lidocaine buffered with sterile sodium bicarbonate, a 25-gauge needle and 5-milliliter syringe, a bone marrow aspiration needle, a bone marrow biopsy needle, 2 30-milliliter syringes, sterile heparin sulfate, sterile gauze, and bandage. Several types of bone marrow biopsy needles are commercially available. This video will demonstrate the use of the Jamshidi needle for obtaining a core biopsy. There should be an additional team member present responsible for immediate preparation of specimens. As you prepare to perform this procedure, ensure that there are no contraindications, that consent has been obtained after explaining the procedure, and that you have gathered the necessary equipment. Bone marrow aspiration and biopsy should not be performed if an infection of the bone is suspected. As the risk of bleeding with this procedure is low, thrombocytopenia is generally not a contraindication. The posterior iliac crest is the most common site used to obtain bone marrow. This site can be reached with the patient in either the prone or decubitus position. This video will demonstrate the decubitus position. The patient should be positioned in the right or left lateral decubitus position with knees flexed. The posterior iliac crest is located at the center of the posterior superior iliac spine. With the patient lying on his or her side, palpate the posterior iliac crest. If there is a reason not to use the posterior iliac crest, bone marrow aspiration from the anterior iliac crest may be performed. Though the sternum can be used to obtain a bone marrow aspiration under exceptional circumstances, it is not suitable for a bone marrow biopsy. Once the patient is positioned, the site should be prepped with a chlorhexidine scrub and draped with sterile towels. As with all invasive procedures, meticulous care should be taken to minimize the risk of infection. While the invasiveness of the procedure may not necessitate a sterile gown and mask, the operator should don sterile gloves and adhere to strict standard precautions. At a minimum, the patient will need medication for procedural pain. The needs of each patient should be considered and discussed in advance. Local or systemic analgesia, or both, may be indicated. Some patients may need medications to induce conscious sedation. Deep sedation is generally recommended for all pediatric patients. A separate clinician should be responsible for monitoring the patient's sedation and physiological status during the bone marrow procedure. After sterile preparation, 1% lidocaine should be slowly injected to raise a wheal over the biopsy site. Then, infiltrate the periosteum with 2 to 5 milliliters of buffered lidocaine. In the awake patient, ensure the adequacy of local anesthesia by gently tapping the periosteum with the tip of the needle used to deliver the anesthetic. Be sure that you have prepared the appropriate number of 30 milliliter syringes with and without heparin prior to starting the bone marrow aspiration. Inspect the bone marrow aspiration needle and remove the plastic guard if one is present. Hold the needle horizontally and insert it into the skin over the posterior iliac crest. Advance the needle until it contacts bone. To engage the bone, the needle should be rotated alternately clockwise and counterclockwise while applying steady pressure. When the marrow cavity is entered, a sudden decrease in resistance is usually felt. The ilium is a large bone, and the marrow space should be located easily. However, the angle of entry is important. In general, the needle should be advanced at an angle completely perpendicular to the bony prominence of the iliac crest. Once the needle is through cortex and the marrow cavity is entered, the needle should stay in place without being held. Next, remove the stylet. Attach a 30 milliliter syringe without heparin and aspirate 1 milliliter of marrow with a firm pull. Since the aspiration itself can be particularly painful, it is prudent to warn the conscious patient before you aspirate. Note that you may hand a syringe to an assistant or pathologist, taking care to maintain sterility. The non-heparinized aspirate should be used to prepare specimen slides. Adequacy of the specimen can be verified by the presence of bony spicules in the sample. Next, aspirate marrow into syringes containing 1 milliliter heparin as needed for diagnostic tests. Remove the aspiration needle and apply pressure with sterile gauze until you are ready to perform the biopsy. A bone marrow biopsy is often done following a bone marrow aspiration. Maintaining sterility, obtain a bone marrow biopsy needle. Holding the needle between your palm and index finger, insert the needle into the patient's skin and advance until it touches bone. If an aspirate has been performed, the same entry site through the skin may be used for the biopsy. However, a skin incision may be indicated if only a bone marrow biopsy is being done, or after an aspirate to allow for entry of the larger biopsy needle. While applying steady pressure, advance the needle with its stylet in place into the cortex by rotating back and forth. The biopsy needle should be inserted into bone at a slightly different angle than a previously performed aspiration. Once the needle is anchored in bone, remove the stylet. Continue to advance the needle 1 to 2 centimeters into the marrow cavity with a back and forth rotating motion. The stylet may be reinserted to determine the length of the biopsy specimen in the needle. In order to remove the biopsy specimen, it must be detached from the surrounding marrow and bone. Do not pull the needle straight out, as doing so may allow the specimen to remain attached to surrounding marrow and prevent it from being removed in the needle. Rotate the needle 360 degrees several times in both clockwise and counterclockwise directions prior to removal. The needle should then be rocked back and forth to ensure detachment of the specimen from surrounding marrow. Slowly pull the needle out while continuing to rotate. Remove the specimen from the needle by inserting a sterile probe into the distal end of the needle and push the specimen through the hub onto sterile gauze or a slide. Inspect the specimen for adequacy of marrow. Apply pressure to the biopsy site with gauze until any bleeding stops, and cover with a bandage or pressure dressing. Instruct the patient that the dressing can be removed the next day, and that they should protect the wound from contact with water until a firm scab is formed. Any substantial bleeding from the site should be reported to the physician. The patient may experience soreness at the biopsy site for 1 to 2 days that is best controlled with oral analgesics. The patient should be instructed that anything out of the ordinary should prompt physician evaluation. Occasionally, bone marrow cannot be aspirated. A dry aspiration may be due to inadequate angle of the needle insertion. In this case, repeat needle placement should be performed. A dry tap can also be due to underlying bone marrow disease, such as myelofibrosis or certain hematologic malignancies. Removal of the biopsy needle without breaking off the core specimen is a common problem. In this case, reinsert the biopsy needle, ensure that the specimen has been detached from the surrounding marrow before removing the needle, and be sure to remove the biopsy needle slowly while continuing to rotate the needle. If the core specimen is too small or contains too much cortex and too little marrow, consider obtaining an additional biopsy specimen. A technician is often available to assist with preparation of the bone marrow aspirate and bone marrow biopsy. Aspirate smears may be prepared at the bedside from unheparinized bone marrow aspirate. This should be done quickly to avoid clotting of the specimen. Bone marrow aspirate may also be sent to the lab for further analysis in heparinized syringes. The core biopsy specimen should be collected onto a sterile gauze or slide and inspected for adequacy of marrow. The biopsy specimen should be at least 2 centimeters in length in an adult patient. If desired, a touch prep of the biopsy core can be made. The touch prep can allow for morphologic analysis similar to that obtained with an aspirate. After the touch prep, the bone marrow biopsy specimen should be placed in a proper sterile specimen container. A bone marrow aspirate and biopsy are useful tools in assessing a variety of hematologic, oncologic, and other disease processes that may involve the marrow space. Attention to detail and care for the patient can yield valuable information that is not available by routine blood studies.
Okay, so that is the video class. I think it's available in Moodle, okay, so you can watch it again. But there are questions actually coming from ba't ayaw na coming that will be coming from that video. Huh? So From that procedure, you're able to see the bone marrow aspiration smear. So you will see here very large cells. Diba? This one is a megakaryoblast. These ones belong to the granulocyte series, and these are, this one's still a blast. This one is in the marrow, but this is already a band. This is an eosinophil. This is another megakaryocyte. These are already in your neutrophils. These two. This one are red blood cells, nucleated red blood cells. When they go out of the marrow, they become the nucleated red blood cells in the circulation. Okay, in this picture, you will see the variation of the types, even the shapes. Okay, I hope you can appreciate that. But when you look at this picture on the right, it's monomorphic, meaning it's monotonous. Most of the cells are myelogenous. These are blasts, myeloblasts. So this is acute myeloblastic leukemia. These are all blasts, myeloblasts, okay? And this comprise more than 20% of the marrow. Okay. Now looking at the smears, we look at neoplastic WBCs. Okay. A normal smear would have these neutrophils, your red blood cells, your monocytes, your platelets. In leukemic smear, you will see those large cells, which are myeloblasts. Okay. This one is a normal neutrophil. Okay, so this is now this slide would just summarize the differences of acute and chronic leukemias, because you already actually took this up in your lecture, right? But in the laboratory, we'll focus on morphology. But briefly, we will go through this. According to the age in acute leukemias, all ages may be affected, but chronic usually in adults. The clinical onset, acute is sudden, chronic is insidious or quietly becoming chronic. The course, if untreated, 6 months or less, patients can die. Chronic can be 2 to 6 years. Leukemic cells, more immature than blast, these are more mature cells. Okay. Anemia is prominent in acute, in chronic just mild, because the patient is actually like compensating. Thrombocytopenia also is prominent, whereas in chronic it will be mild because of the compensation. The WBC count can vary in acute, but in chronic it's usually increased. Lymphadenopathy is mild in acute leukemia, as well as splenomegaly. In chronic, it is present and often prominent. So lymphadenopathy and splenomegaly, when you see them, it's already a chronic leukemia. So this is a picture of your AML here, and you have here. Nakalagay sa akin, please move this window away from the shared application. Okay. Now this is ALL, and this is CML and CLL, or chronic lymphocytic leukemia. So are they differentiated? Acute lymphoblastic leukemia is found in lymphoid cells that grow quickly and common in children. Acute myelogenous leukemia, you will see myeloid cells that grow quickly, common in adults and children. Your chronic lymphoblastic leukemia, you will see lymphoid cells that grow slowly. And in chronic myelogenous leukemia, you will find myeloid cells that grow slowly, common in adults. In myelogenous neoplastic disease, you see this blood. This is a normal, normal. This, if you remember the earlier slides, it's an illustration. This one is the actual slide. These are the myeloblasts, okay. The monomorphic myeloblasts. Okay. See here, this also at this point it may not be important for you to differentiate the various types of AML. AML1, M1 to M7. Okay. In the earlier slide, there was a prominent hour rod, but I did not intentionally mention it, just so you will remember that these hour rods are associated with acute myelogenous leukemia M3 APL or promyelocytic leukemia. Your hour rod, another hour rod here. And this fagot cells. Yan, kita mo tong mga ano na yan. Your acute myelomonocytic leukemia here. And your megakaryocytic, okay, leukemia. Your CML in the PBS. Now we go to your neoplastic lymphocytic neoplasia. Now your ALL here, the monomorphic din siya. The cytoplasm is very scant or scanty. In the bone marrow, it will have almost the same appearance, but you see the other cells, the immature cells. This is a CML in lymphocytic leukemia, wherein you have those smudge cells. These are telltale signs. If you see them, it doesn't mean that this is CLL, but these are telltale signs of CLL. What you look for will be this lymphocyte that seem innocent, no? But these are lymphoblasts. Okay, and this is a CLL seen in the bone marrow aspirate. This is a hairy cell leukemia. There are actually like hair-like projections here. That's why they're called your hairy cell leukemia, which are B cells. And this is the only form of leukemia that is seen in the tissues. Kasi pag sinabi mo leukemia, that's supposed to be in the blood. But this one you see in the tissues. Okay. And the condition is called your mycosis fungoides. And we already took the the plasma proteins. So in plasma proteins, you were able to learn about multiple myeloma. And this is how the cells would look like. You have the location of the nucleus. And your MOT cell here, it's your inclusions, your fatty inclusion known as your Russell body. That's it for now. Any questions? We're going to do yan, we have enough time. Siguro ang ating makeup ay 30 minutes lang later. Okay? Get ready na the reporters. If you don't have questions. Hello? Narinig ba ako? Or
Yes po, Doc.
nagsalita
po,
ako
Doc.
kanina na ano, meron naman. Natapos ko yung buong ano, hindi pala ako na-reach. Okay, ready na kayo?
Yes po, Doc.
Sige. By 5, we should be done in this ano. Bonnie, pwede ikaw ang ano, ikaw ang scorer. So every time may magmema, ano, bigyan mo ng stick, okay? So ikaw meron ka ng 1 stick, pero pag gusto mong sumali, ano, pwede pa naman. Okay, Lopez, Makadangdang, Manalang, Martinez, and Name. Please start.
So good afternoon, everyone. Today we will be presenting our case about non-immune hemolytic transfusion reaction. So next slide, please. So this is the overview of our presentation, and at the end of our presentation, we will be having Kahoot activity. Next slide, please. Next slide. So our case is about a 33-year-old woman arrives at the emergency department complaining of lightheadedness and dizziness. She has a history of manometralgia and was identified with uterine fibroids 4 months ago, which she was managing medically with oral contraceptives. On physical examination, she appears pale and has dry skin, and there is conjunctival pallor. So next slide, please. So for the general data, our patient is IJ, female, 33 years old. She's single, Filipino, Roman Catholic, and she's a businesswoman. Her birth date is November 11, 1989, and her birthplace was in Pampanga City. She's currently living in Quezon City and admitted last March 10, 2022 at FEU NRMF. Next slide. So our patient chief complaint are lightheadedness and dizziness. Next slide po. So for the history of present illness, the present illness started about 1 hour prior to admission while watching a movie on television. She had sudden onset of severe lightheadedness. 30 minutes prior to admission, lightheadedness is accompanied by dizziness, and no associated headache or difficulty of breathing noted. The persistence of the severe lightheadedness and dizziness prompted her to go to the emergency room, where she was subsequently admitted. Next slide po. For the past medical history, she had measles, mumps, and chickenpox during childhood. She also received immunization against polio and DPT. Again, last March 10, 2022, she was confined at FEU NRMF because of heavy menstrual bleeding, back pain, pelvic pain, and frequent urination. She was also diagnosed with uterine fibroids and was treated with Orilissa, 150 milligrams, and to be taken once a day. No history of surgical operation, accidents, injury, psychiatric illnesses, and no allergies as well. Next slide po. For the family history, her mother is 63 years old and has hypertension, and her father is 65 years old, has hypertension and diabetes. Her brother is apparently well, no history of cancer, asthma, and psychiatric illnesses in the family. Next slide po. For the personal and social history, she's a businesswoman managing her own towing services, and she's currently living with her parents in a flood-safe area. She's fond of eating sweets and salty foods and no regular exercise, drinks 3 cups of coffee daily, and no history of sexually transmitted infection or drug abuse. Next slide, please. For the obstetric and menstrual period, she had a minority at 10 years old, subsequent menses were irregular, heavy occurring less than 21 days or more than 35 days with pain and cramping. Her last menstrual period was August 11, 2022, and her previous menstrual period was last June 25, 2022. Lastly, next slide po. For the review of systems, it is positive for fatigue and restless legs. Next slide, please.
Good afternoon, Doc. Good afternoon, classmates. I will be discussing the physical examination and laboratory findings. So the physician conducted a physical examination and noted the following observation. Next slide po. It was observed that the patient has pale and dry skin. So pale and dry skin are common signs of anemia, and it can be a sign of shortage of normal red blood cells, which means that there is less oxygen that is delivered to different parts of the body. So the limited oxygen goes to the organs and tissues, performing essential functions rather than going to our skin and hair. And when the skin and hair are deprived of oxygen, they become pale, dry, and weak. So another observation is that the patient has conjunctival pallor. So yung conjunctival pallor, it is an unhealthy, pale appearance of the palpebral conjunctiva. And it is a simple physical examination finding that can identify anemic patients. So if there is presence of conjunctival pallor, it is a reason enough to perform a hemoglobin determination or complete blood count. Next is mild angular cheilitis. So it is a condition that causes red, swollen patches in the corners of the mouth. So it may be seen in patients with iron deficiency anemia. It is also observed that the patient has koilonychia, also known as yung spoon nails. So as you can see dun sa picture, yung gilid ng nail plate ay naka-elevate while yung gitna is depressed or nakalubog. So usually, it is seen in patients with iron deficiency. Next slide po. The doctor also acquired the patient's vital signs. So for the blood pressure, according to the American Heart Association and JNC8 hypertension guidelines, the patient's blood pressure is normal, which is 90/75. The patient is also febrile with the temperature of 36.6. So yung normal range of the temperature is 36.5 to 37.5. Next naman is yung respiratory rate. So it is increased. Ang normal kasi is 12 to 20 cycles per minute. So with anemia, the lungs overcompensate in order to bring more oxygen, causing breathing difficulties. Next po is oxygen saturation, which is normal, and yung heart rate po is normal din with 75 beats per minute. Next slide po. I will be discussing the laboratory findings po. Next slide po. So to confirm if the patient has anemia, the physician requested for a complete blood count and iron studies. So for the complete blood count or CBC of the patient, the WBC is within normal range. The RBC, hemoglobin and hematocrit, are decreased, which is often seen in anemic patients. So the MCV, or the mean corpuscular volume, which measures the average size of your red blood cells, are decreased. So the patient has the MCV of 74.1. So according sa Rodax Hematology book, MCV of less than 80 femtoliters suggests microcytic anemia, which is commonly seen in iron deficiency anemic patients. Next is the mean corpuscular hemoglobin and the mean corpuscular hemoglobin concentration. They both measure the amount of hemoglobin in the red blood cells. So in our patient, it is decreased. Next is the red cell distribution rate, which measures the differences in the volume and size of our red blood cells. So yung sa patient natin, it is increased. So a high RDW means that there's a major difference between the sizes of our red blood cells. And a decreased MCV and increased RDW, which is seen in our patient, it is suggestive for iron deficiency. And lastly, for the platelet count, it is normal. Next slide po. For the iron studies, first is ferritin. It is decreased in our patient. So ferritin is the major iron storage protein of the body. If iron deficiency progresses, ferritin levels and blood iron levels fall as your body uses up the stored iron. So yung iron din ng patient and iron saturation are decreased, and transferrin and iron binding capacity are increased. So yung transferrin naman, it is the main protein in the blood that binds to iron and transports it throughout the body. So kapag mataas yung transferrin, it signifies low iron. It means that there is less iron bound to transferrin, allowing for a high circulation of non-bound transferrin in the body, revealing a possible iron deficiency anemia. So given the patient's symptomatic anemia, the attending physician ordered a unit of red blood cell to be transfused. And after 30 minutes into the transfusion, the patient developed fever and chills.
So for the next part, diagnostics, I will be discussing this. So ayun nga, as was nakasasabi lang, yung blood transfusion, yung naging management for the patient's case. Unfortunately, 30 minutes after the ginagawang transfusion, nagkaroon ng adverse reaction si patient. So this diagnostic test will show us, ang pinaka-main concern natin kasi is kung meron bang hemolysis si patient or wala. So among the diagnostic tests to be requested are repeat ABO testing and RH testing on post-transfusion patient sample. So this is requested to rule out any incompatibility issues or possible clerical errors. Indirect antiglobulin testing and direct antiglobulin testing naman. So let's refresh ourselves lang that indirect antiglobulin testing is used to detect unbound antibodies to red blood cells which may be present in patients' serum, whereas direct antiglobulin testing is used to identify whether red blood cells have antibodies attached to their surface. So, ang pinaka-diagnostic test na ginagamit to see if there's a transfusion reaction would be your direct antiglobulin testing. So, pag nag-positive ang direct antiglobulin testing, ibig sabihin may hemolysis. And this positive that may dalawang scenario siya. First, the patient's own antibodies coats the donor red blood cells, or yung donor antibodies coat the patient's own red cells. So that will indicate na may positive that test. For your peripheral smear and complete blood count, this is done yung peripheral blood smear to look for signs of hemolysis. So makikita ito kapag yung red blood cells merong naging fragmented part yung RBC or schistocytes, nagkaroon ng spherocytes na yung red blood cells wherein instead of biconcave shape si red blood cell, naging sphere siya, or bite cells, which is due to precipitated hemoglobin. Your complete blood count will monitor the severity of hemolysis if present. So trend other hemolysis labs such as your unconjugated bilirubin, haptoglobin, and your lactate dehydrogenase. If hemolysis is present nga, ang expected result natin dito is that your unconjugated bilirubin is increased, haptoglobin yung decreased, so serum haptoglobin lang yung inaasahan nating decreased, and then lactate dehydrogenase is increased as well. For your urinalysis, ang titignan natin dito would be the gross and microscopic findings. Sa gross, titignan natin kung may gross hematuria siya, or for your microscopic findings naman is if present ang urobilinogen. Because if it is present,
kailangan mo yata sila i-entertain dito?
Kasi naiya ako, may klase ka.
For the basic metabolic
kaya naman
panel,
baka business yung...
Hindi.
And lastly, for the basic metabolic panel, it is to monitor for signs of renal failure and para ma-assess din kung kamusta yung overall health or effect nung transfusion reaction kay patient.
Next is for the clinical manifestation or clinical features. Next slide po. So, ito yung mga clinical features that can be seen after transfusion. So, dito tayo magpo-focus sa fever and chills. So, these are clinical manifestation of the cytokine production during an inflammatory process. So, yung example ng endogenous pyrogens natin that increases the temperature of the core thermoregulatory center in the hypothalamus are the tumor necrosis factor and interleukins 1 and 6. Yung hypothalamus natin, responsible siya for the temperature regulation, and it is the area of the brain that determines the person's normal body temperature, which is approximately 37 degrees Celsius or yung 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So yung body natin makes an effort to control itself down when it deviates from this ideal temperature. And ma-achieve lang to by generating shivers or which raises the temperature, or sweating, or causing a fever which lowers the temperature. So numerous circulating leukocytes such as yung monocytes natin, lymphocytes, and even the natural killer cells can create or produce these pyrogens. So other reasons of having a fever and chills after the transfusion are receiving antibodies that reacts with the white cell antigens or white cell fragments in the blood product. So other clinical manifestations that can be seen after transfusion are vomiting or nausea, tachycardia, hypertension, and tachypnea.
To continue po with the report, next slide po please. So, lagi po nating tatandaan na previously yan, okay po. So, any signs and symptoms na mararamdaman ng pasyente or mag-appear sa kanya after the transfusion na hindi present before, lagi natin yung i-assume na possible transfusion reaction yun. So, sa case po natin, yung adverse reaction na naramdaman ng pasyente is yung chills, 30 minutes into transfusion, and fever, which is 38.2 degrees Celsius. Ang diagnosis po natin is febrile non-hemolytic transfusion reaction. So, kasi yun yung sinasuggest ng clinical and laboratory findings sa journal, and walang alternative transfusion reaction na nakita. This one is a type of non-immune hemolytic transfusion reaction, and i-define po natin yun sa next slide. Next slide, please. Okay. So, non-immune hemolytic transfusion reaction, it is due to the mechanical or physical destruction of transfused cells seen commonly dun sa white blood and packed RBCs. So, meron po tayong mga example conditions dito na pwedeng makasira sa RBC natin or mag-cause ng RBC injury. Una, yung thermal injury. So, kapag may excess yung heat or excessive freezing, so pwede po siyang cause ng injury sa RBC. Pwede rin yung osmotic injury kapag yung entry ng water into the cell, magkakause siya ng swelling and eventually lysis, and mechanical injury sa paggamit ng mga small gauge intervention access. For the clinical signs, usually nagpe-present po ito ng increase in hemoglobin sa blood, presence of hemoglobin sa urine, increased potassium, kasi yung increased potassium, ma-observe po yun sa patient with renal failure and cardiac arrhythmia. And lastly, fever. Next slide po, please. In addition po, may nakita kami mga extrinsic defects or conditions na pwede rin mag-cause ng RBC injury katulad ng microangiopathic hemolytic anemia. Dito po, dun sa mga small blood vessels, pag kunyari nagkaroon sila ng clot, so liliit yung diameter. Tapos pag dumaan dun yung blood, magkakause ng shearing sa RBC, so magkakaroon ng lysis. So next is yung macroangiopathic hemolytic anemia. Sa traumatic cardiac hemolytic anemia, kapag dumaan yung blood sa defective na prosthetic heart valve, sa Sa exercise-induced naman, kapag sobrang nabugbog yung kamay or paa nung nag-exercise, pwede rin mag-cause ng hemoglobinuria or presence of hemoglobin sa urine. Next is hemolytic anemia caused by infectious agents. Meron po tayong mga nakalista dito. And one of this, familiar po tayo sa malaria. So ito pong mga to, ini-invade nila yung RBC and nagkakos sila ng injury sa RBC. And lastly, yung RBC injury due to other causes like chemicals, drugs, venoms, and extensive. Next slide po, please. So for the treatment, next slide po, please. So pag na-observe natin na may transfusion reaction si patient, immediately stop the transfusion. Next is hydrated with IV fluids. Ginagawa po natin yung IV hydration para ma-maintain yung urine output ng patient para hindi siya magkaroon ng acute kidney injury. And then for the medications, pwedeng magbigay ng diuretics kapag nakita natin na hindi nagpo-produce ng adequate urine output yung patient. And last is supportive care, depende sa mararamdaman ng pasyente na reaction. Next slide po, please. So ito pong management nito galing sa lecture. So pag naka-encounter tayo ng transfusion reaction sa clinic or kung may makita tayong ganun sa ward if ever po, kailangan nating i-check yung label ng patient, blood components, paperwork, in case na mayroong clerical error kasi yun yung most common. Next is inform the blood bank, get the transfusion reaction investigation form, and start investigation. So, kailangan nating iwasan na matransfuse pa yung blood na yon sa ibang pasyente and mag-cause din ng transfusion reaction. So, next is check signs of mechanical error like intravenous needle gauge size and other fluids given to the patient as well as the blood temperature of the patient. Next is order necessary diagnostic tests need to confirm the diagnosis. So, this diagnostic test are already discussed by the previous reporter po. So, next slide po. So, magkakaroon po tayo ng game. Ika-facilitate po siya ni Angelica.
Ayan, so kindly join the game. You may go to the Kahoot website, scan the code, tapos you will see the game pin. So ilan tayo sa class? Ilan ang inaasahan nating participants? Sali kayo, mayroong surprise at the end of the game. So ayan. So basically the concept is pabilisan. So it starts, tumatagal pala siya. So ilan ang inaasahan nating participants? Konti na lang, magsa-start na yung game. Dali! Charot. Okay, so it will start na in 1 second. Final. Okay, what are the clinical manifestations seen after transfusion? Is it all of the above na increased heart rate, increased blood pressure, and fever, or isa lang sa kanila? Nagkakaroon lang po technical difficulties.
Sali na ulit kayo, guys.
So for question number 2, what is the ideal body temperature? In Fahrenheit to guys ha. Okay, answer is 98.6 degrees Fahrenheit. So, Doc yung Su, wow, Do. So another true or false, an increased MCV and decreased RDW is suggestive of iron deficiency. Wow, bibilis mong hula, oh. Correct answer is false. Number 1 pa rin siya. So tingnan natin kung may hahabol. Which of the following will indicate that the patient has hemolysis? Increased unconjugated bilirubin, decreased haptoglobin, increased lactate dehydrogenase, or all of the above? So, all of the above po is the correct answer. Siya pa rin ang una. Pero at least mahabol si Miss Hart and si Theodore. What is the major iron storage protein in the body? Parang mas mataas ata ang score kapag unahan ata. Pabilisan and tamang sagot. Humabol na isa. The correct answer is ferritin. In our case study, what personal history should be asked? Personal history. So correct answer is if living in a flood-prone area. Hala, joke. Wow, puro pala ito, mga Korean nicknames. Let's go! What are the clinical manifestations seen after transfusion? Oh, bonus na to! Dapat tama na. Dapat tama na lahat. Not charot. Hala, baka tulog sila kanina. Joke. So another true or false question, indirect antiglobulin testing is used to detect unbound antibodies to RBCs which may be present in patients' plasma. True or false? Oh, sadly false siya. So in our case study, what information in the past health history should be asked? Past health history. Immunization. La. So for the final, rebound, Miss Hart is the highest climber. Wow, next naman. So for the final and last question, when should we get the post-transfusion recipient's blood sample? Post-transfusion recipient sample, kailan mo daw kukunin? Once lang ba or twice? First and fifth hours. You have to get it twice. Ayan. So, wow! Galing naman nun. 10 out of 10. Message nyo kami. Actually, meron kaming cash prize for our winners. Message nyo lang kami for your cash prize. Congratulations po. Ay, identify yourselves daw muna. O, honesty is the best policy, ha?
Sino po yung mga placers po?
Hello po, ako po si D.O. Hi, ako po si...
Congrats!
Hello.
Ah.
Hello, everybody.
Yes, Doc.
Ay, balik niyo nga yung slides ninyo. So, naku, 5 o'clock na. So, we're also in our makeup hour. In our case, based on our case, we had a transition reaction. No? Sige, baba niyo pa. What type of transfusion reaction is this? What are the two general types of transfusion reaction? Ay, Bonnie, magano ka na.
Yes po, Doc. Yes.
Sige, sino ang ano? Who would like to answer that one? Oy, pa po yung ano yung mga may please turn on your cameras.
Doc, yun po ba yung immune and non-immune types of reaction po? Transfusion.
You're asking me or telling me?
Telling po.
Hindi, wag mong sabihin yun po ba yung
Sorry
ano?
po.
So, restate it.
The two transfusion reactions would be non-immune and immune po.
Yeah, it can be immune. That's based on the immunologic nature of the reaction. How else can a transfusion reaction be classified? Merong immune, non-immune, ano pa? In terms of the appearance of the symptoms.
Doc, acute and delayed.
Yes, acute and delayed transfusion reaction. In terms of hemolysis, the presence of hemolysis. Nag-ano ka, Bonnie, ha? In terms of, bakit si Nohara ba? Jason, yung Chief MedTech. Oh. Sino pa iba sa inyo, Chief MedTech? Bakit ganyan yung mga forehead nyo lang pinapakita? Nyo wala kayong uniform, no? Kasi Friday na. May iba sa inyo pa naman, konti na lang buhok sa forehead. Sino na nga yung nag-chat sa? Uy, ano na? Akala ko ba sa usapan natin mabilis kayong mag-ano? So si Name kasi sabi niya, mahina daw internet niya. Si Gutierrez. Bakit wala kang camera? Ayun. Sige, Gutierrez. Ano na nga yung tanong ko kanina? In terms of hemolysis, ikaw, Kadukoy, bilang ang hati ng buhok mo ay parang planchado? Sige. Ang bagal ng Google, no? Saka hindi nag-ano. Steven Kadukoy, what in terms of hemolysis, how are transfusion reactions classified? Naku, nasa general pa nga lang tayo. Sinong best friend mo, Kadukoy? Wala na, nagtapos na ang friendship niya.
Nohara po.
Sino ba? Jason, the Chief MedTech. Come on. Ano na? Hemolytic, tapos yung isa. Uy, ano yung isa? Kung hemolytic, ano ang isa pa? Kung may hemolytic transfusion reaction, ano yung isa? Yes, non-hemolytic. Bakit hindi ba kayo nagta-transfusion reaction dun sa ano ninyo? Dun sa hospital? Ano yung pangalan ng hospital niyo? San Juan something? Ano yun? Garcia, oh, na ang pathologist ay dati kong kaklase sa MedTech. Anyway, so the case of our patient is what type of transfusion reaction? May kailangan ba magtawag ako? O Hipolito, kasi ikaw yung nasa screen ko.
Doc, non-immune hemolytic transfusion reaction po.
Kulang. Di ba kaya sinabi ko how can the transfusion reactions be classified?
Acute non-hemolytic
acute non-hemolytic
transfusion reaction, Doc.
Non-hemolytic, hindi na natin sinabi kung non-immune or immune. Pag hemolytic siya, it can be immune hemolytic. So what's the case of our patient again? Acute.
Acute non-hemolytic.
Anong cute?
Acute non-hemolytic.
Acute non-hemolytic transfusion reaction. Okay. So, those are the general types of transfusion reactions. No? So, merong hemolytic, merong non-hemolytic. In non-hemolytic transfusion reactions, what are the different transfusion reactions under that group? Give one. Vilo.
Fever.
Fever, that's a manifestation, di ba? So, what type of transfusion reaction presents with fever? Hala, nawala. Kinain ng internet si Bilog. Palagyanan mo na siya, Bonnie, kasi may sinabi naman. Okay, I think medyo... You already have a lecture on transfusion reaction or wala pa?
Meron na po, Doc.
Meron na. Bakit hindi niyo alam? I think you listened to the lecture but you really haven't tawag nito, grasp the concept of the entire transfusion reaction. I don't blame you on that. No? That's why you have this laboratory for you to grasp the concept of transfusion reaction investigation. Transfusion reactions are, well, grouped as to acute or delayed, non-hemolytic, hemolytic. Pag hemolytic, is it immune or non-immune hemolytic? Okay, those are the general groups. No? For acute non-hemolytic transfusion reaction, you have what? Your acute febrile transfusion reaction, you have your TRALI, you have your TACO. Alam na yun, di ba? TRALI, TACO, ano pa nga ba yung iman ng hemolytic? Anaphylactic reaction or allergic transfusion reaction. For the hemolytic, it's immune or non-immune. Dalawa lang naman yun. Basta, ang difference nun pag mayroong hemolysis or walang hemolysis. Diba? Because there can be a transfusion reaction where there is hemolysis but it is not due to the antibodies formed. Okay. Any reaction that is not present prior to the transfusion and observed or manifested during the transfusion or after the transfusion is considered a transfusion reaction. Malinaw yon or malabo yung statement na yon? Sige nga, Tungol, can you elaborate that statement?
Doc, kapag may reaction po after ng transfusion, i-assume po palagi na may hemolytic.
Okay, after or during the transfusion, no? So any symptoms, any manifestation, or any signs present absent before the transfusion and present during the transfusion or after the transfusion is considered a transfusion reaction. And what do you do? What do you do with transfusion if you observe transfusion reaction?
You stop the transfusion immediately po.
Sino na nga yung nagsalita? Yan, very good. Hindi na kailan tawagin. Bonnie, lagin. Stop the transfusion immediately? Supposedly, no? But for febrile reactions, because if you have fever, but the patient is actually having an intermittent fever, a fever with pattern, then you may not stop the transfusion. You just probably pause, investigate. If this fever is attributed to the primary disease, then it's not, you may not stop it. Ano pa ba yung sasabihin natin? Para ako yung mas maraming sinasabi. Kayo yung magsasabi. Anong next na? Okay. Kanina, the reporters mentioned about DAT. What is the purpose of doing DAT?
Doc, to check the presence of antibodies on the surface of RBC.
What kind of antibody?
Antibodies that usually not present po sa person, Doc. Yan ba yung mga
ano? Mga ano?
Wait
Anong
lang,
klase? Sige, you ask Google.
Doc, pwede mag-ano?
Sure, lahat pwede.
Sa DAT po, Doc, it detects the antibody that directs against yung sa antigens present dun sa RBCs nung donor po, Doc.
So anong tawag mo sa mga antibodies na yun? Hala, ano ba yan?
Unexpected po.
Immunoglobulin.
Antibodies are immunoglobulins. Ay, be quick, Bonnie ha, yung mga MEMARs, isulat mo. Antibodies are immunoglobulins. Okay, correct din naman yun. Anong klaseng antibody?
AHG po. White blood cells.
Combs po.
AHG, ano ba ibig sabihin ng AHG?
Anti-human globulin antibodies po.
And it is produced by humans?
It is
AHG, by the way, is a reagent to detect antibodies that are formed. No? Kaya AHG yon. And the way they are produced, usually, mo yung antigen or antibody, acting as an antigen to a mouse. To a mouse, tapos magpuproduce sila ng anti-human globulin, no? Or it can also be through recombinant production of antibodies or anti-human globulin. So anti-human globulin is a reagent, hindi siya part of the antibody form when a red cell is transfused to a wrong blood type person. So ano yung antibodies yun? Merong nag-alo-alo kanina, yun. The allo antibodies doon sa mga red cells, no, na transfuse halimbawa. Okay, pa nga sabihin ko. At para saan ang DAT ulit?
Doc, to detect yung antibodies din sa present sa surface ng RBC.
Okay, allo-antibodies. So, halimbawa, anti-A, anti-B, or anti-KEL, mga ganun, di ba? So, ang DAT, bound or unbound?
Bound po.
Bound antibodies. Okay? And what will it tell you in terms of the transfusion reaction? Pag positive ang DAT, anong klaseng transfusion reaction siya?
Hemolytic po. Immune hemolytic.
Hemolytic agad? Di ba pwedeng immune? So immune siya, immune type which is most likely will become hemolytic. Pero ang DAT means immune type yung transfusion reaction. Tapos for hemolysis, anong titingnan mo doon sa transfusion reaction mo? Hoy, anong workup ba ng transfusion reaction? Marami
pwede po yung sa urine po, Doc. Presence of hemoglobinuria kapag gross po. And then, pwede po yung sa bilirubin, increase din po. And then sa electrolytes, pwede pong tataas rin po yung potassium. And pwede hemoglobinemia din po, Doc.
Okay, pwede naman yon. Ngayon, so meron kang hemolysis na na-observe, meron kang DAT. Ang tawag ngayon sa transfusion reaction mo ay?
Immune hemolytic.
Hemolytic HTR.
Acute hemolytic transfusion reaction, probably immune type, no? So DAT will tell you na merong magkaibang ano. So ano bang most common cause of acute immune hemolytic transfusion reaction? What is the most common cause?
Clerical error po.
Yes, clerical error. Hindi lang to sa blood bank, kayo when you become interns or clerks, nako, pamaya mali yung pinag-extrakan ninyo, mali yung mako-cross-match, makakapatay kayo ng klase. Okay, so acute, ano nang sabi? Sorry, may nagsumilip na. No? So this is immune and this is clerical. Kaya dapat mag-iingat ha. That's the most common cause of dahil maling red cells ang naisalin doon sa pasyente. Okay. Bonnie, ilan na yung mga sticks mo dyan?
Yung nagsalita po, Doc, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 14 na po, Doc, yung nagsalita.
14, ilan ba kayo? 32, 31, 30.
30 po, Doc.
O, asan na yung nangyari sa 16? Nakala ko ba may mema? O, mema muna tayo para Hoy, sinong magmema dyan? Ay, sasara ko na yun. 0 kayo dun sa memahan. How do you feel about this patient? Wala pa rin. Hoy, sarado na.
Sad, Doc.
Sad? Why are you sad? Dapat naman may konti explanation. Ano na nga eh. Bonnie, pagka mga yung feeling, lalagyan mo ng stick tapos may S.
Sad kasi, Doc, yung transfusion po siya, clerical error po yung naging reason din. Kaya
hindi ba dapat angry?
Doc, medyo kasi syempre clinical po, so parang nararamdaman ko lang.
Hindi, naman, so sad sa'yo. Sino dyan ang gustong angry?
Ako po, Doc, angry po.
O bakit ka angry?
Kasi okay naman po yung patient, but nagka-problem lang because of the clerical error. So, yun, Doc.
Hindi dapat hindi ka angry. Happy ka lang.
Doc, same din ako sa angry.
Sa angry? Why are you angry?
Kasi Doc, parang as a medtech, dapat alam mo na yung mga procedures eh. So, dapat hindi ka na nakapag-mistake dun sa mga steps.
O, sige, ano pa? Ano pa ibang emotions ba? Ano bang feelings pa about this case?
Doc, paano pag kunyari nangyari po sa amin yun? Just hindi naman po ina-expect. Kunyari, may ganun pong error.
Incident.
May magagawa
Hindi, syempre, makukulong kayo.
Ganun na talaga.
Tanggal lisensya po din.
Wala pa nga kayong lisensya eh. Diba? Hindi na kayo makaka-board exam.
Sad nga talaga, Doc.
Ano siya? Ano yung negligence kasi yan? Ang case dyan. No? So, yun. Wala sa inyong afraid?
Doc.
Ano ba yan? Pati feelings ako pa nagpo-provide?
Doc, pwede po bang
as a blood banker po dati. Kasi
Ilan
meron
ang
naman
pinatay
po.
mo dati?
Wala naman po, Doc. Meron
Ah.
po kasing compatible naman siya when we, tawag dito, pag kino-cross-patch po namin and then magkakaroon po ng HTR. So, it's a we're a bit disappointed kasi sabi niyo po, angry sila sa mga medtech na sa clerical error. Pero, Dok, kasi minsan po sa, na po yun, sa patient na po siya nagkakaroon ng
So, kasalanan ng patient, ganun?
Hindi naman po. Sa body niya na po mismo yun, Dok. Kung may mga po siya, cold antibodies and po.
Talagang
Kasi,
hindi kasi nga ito clerical to,
ko
diba?
talaga, Doc. Pero yun. If sa case po magbe-base, clerical error po. Pero
Oo.
yun.
Yeah, minsan naman, there are transfusion reactions that are not hemolytic, that are not immune, and that are not secondary to and the most common actually of the transfusion reactions are, sige, yung mga nabanggit natin, muna, para may makamema dyan. Uy, hulaan nyo na lang. Alam ko naman wala kayong dyan. Hulaan nyo na lang.
Febrile.
Febrile po, Doc.
Yes.
Hypertension po, Doc.
Febrile. Pero bigyan mo na rin ng point yun, Bonnie, yung nag-hypertension dyan, yung Yes, acute febrile non-hemolytic transfusion reaction, di ba? So what's the most common cause of acute AFNHTR? What's the most common cause of acute febrile non-hemolytic transfusion reaction?
Clerical error.
Clerical error po.
Ito, gaya. Ano ba naman? Minusan mo nga yung mga yan, Bonnie. Hindi. Okay, again the most common cause of acute hemolytic transfusion reaction is clerical error. But in general, what is the most common cause of acute, what's the common transfusion reaction? It is acute febrile non-hemolytic transfusion reaction. Tapos, what is the most common cause of acute febrile non-hemolytic transfusion reaction? Hindi siya clerical. So, what is it? Alam ko na banggit yun sa report.
Rise in temperature po during post-transfusion.
Antibodies, Doc. The
Vitamins.
HLA antibodies.
Incompatibility.
Grabe, ang dami. Oy, mo yan, Bonnie? Pag-record mo yung mga nagdi-deliver you dyan.
Antibodies po.
Incompatibility.
Fever and chills, Doc.
Sa may inflammation or
Grabe.
inflammation.
Nalilito na si Bonnie kung sino bibigyan niya ng stick, Okay. Yan yung technique pagka hindi ka sure na sagot mo, sumabay ka sa iba. Diba? Para pag namali man siya, hindi halata. Pero nagsabi ka, di ba? Anyway, sad to mali kayong lahat. Diba? O itanong natin sa ating scorer na sinabi niya, top-notcher daw siya at magaling daw siya. Okay, hoy. Paloma.
Naka-lecture yun lang ng immune na.